Marcus Satterfield, Jeff Sims. You've got a great column on HuskerOnline.com breaking all of that down. When you were able to talk to Marcus Satterfield at length about Jeff Sims, and you knew Marcus Satterfield's SIP was high on Jeff Sims, but your conversation, I think, even surprised you more how high he is on the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he said things like, as far as his arm talent, I mean, he said he's got, let's put it this way. This is what Satterfield said. He's got really, 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 really good arm talent. That's 5. You can tell, well, he said, watching the film at Georgia Tech, I couldn't tell exactly what he would be like. And then when you see him live and you see that 6'4", 220-pound frame, Satterfield said he looks bigger now, and the ball just comes out of his hand. He says, this is just Satterfield talking. I'm not hyping the young man. Satterfield kind of was. He says he's got, elite arm talent. And, he just happens to be a really strong runner. But the big thing is he's pass first. He's a pass first guy. But they really like the fact that he can pull it and run it when you have to. And you talk to any defensive coordinator, a pass first guy that can run like him, that's the biggest headache you have. That's the biggest headache.
It's amazing when you think about how they got him, when they got him, because I just feel like there wasn't a lot of, there were teams that wanted him, but they made it look pretty easy to get him from the portal. I mean, it just kind of happened. Blink of your eye. He was committed to Nebraska. Obviously, NIL, other things are involved. But this is a guy that, knowing what we know now, I think a lot of people are like, wow, Nebraska really got a good quarterback potentially out of the portal.
Well, they're going to lean on him. So if you're, there's that conversation about Nebraska being a bowl team. They're not too bad. Rule inherited a pretty good situation. Well, it starts with Sims. Any optimism you have with this team has to start right there with Jeff Sims, in my opinion. I don't know where else you'd start it, Sean. So that's a lot of it. Now, Sims clearly is number one. I don't feel like we're being irresponsible by talking about him as a starter. The gap between he and Chubba Purdy and Heinrich Haarberg is probably a little wide for some people's liking, including mine. Not Satterfield's, though. At least he didn't sound that way. He said, no, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with those guys. I'd be comfortable putting Heinrich Haarberg, Satterfield said, he'd be comfortable putting Heinrich Haarberg in a game right now. Chubba, same thing. He did say with Chubba, let me get to it. Satterfield said it may not always look pretty with Chubba, but he's going to find a way to move the ball and get first downs. And he says he trusts him with the football. Chubba at times last year, Sean, I thought he looked ill prepared. I didn't think he looked prepared.
He battled some injuries at times. Even one of the games that he was inserted in, I believe it was the Illinois game, he had hardly practiced the whole week. And,
right.
and Mark Whipple demanded that he go in and threw a chair in the locker room that he went in over Logan Smothers at that time. And, I don't know if Logan was really ready, and it showed. And then Logan came in late in the game and looked a lot more prepared.
Yeah. Chubba did not. He looked skittish. I'm not really putting it on Chubba.
That's on Whipple. The other coaches wanted it all, I guess, put Logan in, and Whipple threw a chair and said, no, put in Chubba. And we saw what it looked like, an ill-prepared quarterback at that time. And it's not a knock at Chubba. He wasn't ready to come in at that moment against arguably one of the better defenses in the conference. Illinois almost beat Michigan earlier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Illinois remember, Sean, they had a first round corner.
Well, they had 3 defensive backs drafted.
There you go. So he was up against in a difficult situation. As far as Haarberg goes, 6'5", 210-pound Heinrich Haarberg. He was just 2 for 9 passing in the spring game, which gave a lot of people pause, including myself. I asked Satterfield about that, and he said he had an interesting quote. He said, I think spring games used to be fun when nobody really cared about them. He said, in our spring game, we divided it up so we could have a real game. And some of the guys weren't always throwing to guys they were normally throwing to. Now, you hear that from coaches sometimes. He said also that Heinrich hasn't played a lot of football in front of big crowds, and it's going to be a little more intense in that situation, in that environment. He just thinks being in those situations will help him. But he said, I'm not alarmed at all. I think he had a really, really good spring, made a huge jump. If he goes into the game and plays quarterback, I'm just fine with it, he said.
Yeah, that deal. I mean, and Casey Thompson, I thought your comments about Casey Thompson were interesting too, because it is the reality of the portal era that we now live in. You just aren't going to really be able to keep two quarterbacks on a roster with 20 plus games of Power 5 experience,
right,
because there's too much value in this portal immediate eligibility era that also involves NIL. And NIL was not why Casey Thompson left. I'd be curious, what kind of NIL he's getting at FAU, if there's much involved at all, because we know he was the highest paid NIL player at Nebraska a year ago. We've got that from multiple sources.
Right.
Could FAU even come close to that? Do they have anything in, because that NIL he was making, I'm going to venture to guess at Nebraska was more than most of the assistant coaches make for salaries at FAU.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think you're exactly right. If it's the number I have in my, which probably
let's call it 200,000 to 300,000 range.
Yeah, and there's not that many FAU coaches making that,
right?
Head coach. You're right.
Maybe the coordinators are in that area, but he's definitely. I mean, so I don't know if NIL was why he left. I mean, he wants to start. When you're a 25-year-old coming back, he left to start, and Marcus Satterfield more or less said that to you.
He did say that. He said he had 1 year of eligibility left, so he didn't really have time for a quarterback battle here. He needed to go somewhere he could play and get snaps. And Satterfield, just paraphrasing, said, we're on the same page. Casey was straight up with us, treated us in a fair manner, and we did the same with him. It sounds like it was amicable. Sean, you portrayed it very well. It's cut and dried. Casey wanted to go somewhere where he could play. Now, I didn't use the quote from Satterfield, but Satterfield thinks he's a Sunday quarterback. Now, I don't know if Casey's a Sunday quarterback. He might be a backup Sunday quarterback. But you know me, I don't rain on anybody's dream. I mean, I hope Casey can do that. I don't know. I haven't seen that. And after seeing Sims and seeing that size and arm strength, you can see it was going to be I kind of concede this now, Sean. It was going to be an uphill climb for Casey.
When you have an offensive line that's been as inconsistent as Nebraska's in protecting the quarterback as far as pass protection, Casey took a lot of hits last year. I mean,
yeah, like at Rutgers, he took one from both sides and in front. He got hit three spots.
His shoulder. I mean, he hurt his shoulder, and if he takes. When you're just that much, I mean, Jeff Sims might be able to take a few more of those hits where it's not going to hurt him like it did Casey Thompson.
Right. I mean, the way you can kind of sum up Jeff Sims is this. Remember how good Jamal Lord was as a runner? He couldn't throw it. Sims can throw it. Maybe like an NFL quarterback, but also can run it probably not too far away from how Jamal Lord ran. Am I going too far with that, Sean?
Well, the comparison, I'm not going to say he's a Lamar Jackson, but that's his style. He's got like a Lamar Jackson style, the way he plays.
Yeah, probably better passer though, right?
Lamar Jackson?
No, Sims better passer.
Than Lamar Jackson?
I think Sims is a better passer, yeah. I do.
Like the Lamar Jackson from Louisville that won the Heisman that starts.
Yeah, I think Sims is more polished.
That would be. I mean, if he is, Nebraska struck gold because Lamar Jackson's obviously one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL too right now.
Yeah. Maybe I'm going too far, but Sims is pretty polished.